is happening, you guys? Welcome back to the Let's Go Win podcast, where we are here to help you be happy, healthy, wealthy, and get better every single day. I know the gentleman I'm going to bring on today is going to be a huge part of that because I had a chance to talk to him. He leads a very cool life. He gets to travel around the world, which is awesome, and he's learned so many amazing things. The Alter Method founder, Julian Guderley, has a mission to empower individuals to embrace their true selves, awaken their potential, and foster a more connected and authentic world. Whether through his writings, in coaching sessions, or on podcasts, Julian's impact is felt through his practical approach to leadership and personal growth. Julian is also the host and creator of the Green Planet, Blue Planet podcast, a podcast series with over 350 episodes about regeneration, a top 3% global podcast, which features in Business Insider and other platforms. Julian, what's up, brother? How we doing?
I'm doing good, JM. I'm glad to be here. This is fun. What a great intro. Thank you for those kind words.
Well, you've earned it, man. This is all you. I guess what I would start with, you want to foster a more connected and authentic world. This is one of the biggest items for me because authenticity is, in my opinion, the greatest superpower we can have for ourselves, give to ourselves, that gift. How did you find your way to truly saying, I love who I am as Julian. I'm going to be me. I'm going to be my authentic self. What does that journey look like for you, brother?
Yeah, that's a great question. I do believe that everyone has a superpower, and, the superpower is to simply be yourself. And that's, I think it's such a pivotal, often overlooked gift that to each equation, we can bring our true and full self rather than trying to, pretend to be someone else or try to strive to be like someone else that we've seen, in TV, in a magazine, or that we've read about in a book. It's really about understanding, I think, in the first place, who am I? Who am I on a physical level? Who am I on a spiritual level? And how can I bring more of that into each moment, right? Some moments we rest, some moments we digest, but many moments we're on to play the game, to be part of life. And I would call that the infinite game, right? The game that keeps on going. That's more than just, winning a moment or a competition. I think it's about winning at what I would call the infinite game, the game of the soul, so to speak. And so for me, all of that started pretty much as a child, as a teenager. I got really blessed by going abroad really early. I was 15, spent a year in South America. And so I just had to always kind of grapple at that question. Who am I? Who am I in this context? Who am I in this new place? Who am I in this different language? Who am I to these people who are graciously opening their doors and hosting me, right? Like, who am I to these people on a different continent, in a different country that speak a different language? And so because of that contrast, because of those experiences, and it kept going like that for me pretty early age, 15 to 20, I, learned to speak a couple of different languages, lived in a few different countries, and definitely very fortunate, definitely very privileged that I was able to make those experiences. But it started this quest, it started this journey. And from there, it kind of couldn't stop anymore. Meaning, when I first got back home to Germany, where I grew up, at age 16 or so. This is a long time ago now, but I still remember it. Like, there was this pivotal moment where I realized people around me did not just make this year-long exchange experience that I just made. Like, the adults around me that I thought are, they're getting how life works, or they know what's important about life. They did not have this experience. And so I realized, man, I'm gonna have to somehow fight through this last couple of years in school here. I'm gonna have to fight through these next couple of years in university, because a lot of people around me are they're in a square box, and they're playing a very small game, and that wasn't easy to grapple with, to be honest with you, because I felt infinite at that moment. I felt like I'm connected to the world. I could just go out and do anything. And yet here I was in an environment which, again, like, Germany in school and university system, I mean, it's not the worst in the world, but in an environment where everyone was just telling me what was not possible. And so that's when that journey started for me. I'm like, no, stop this. I'm going to win at a bigger game here. I'm not going to compete with anyone here. I'm going to find my path. I'm going to find me. I'm going to keep giving me to the world.
Yeah, it is interesting how when people tend to broaden their horizons, whether it's traveling abroad, just really opening themselves up to greater experiences, whether that's reading books or whatever it is. But often, just like, I'm sure when you went to university, they want you to be in a certain box. You're a good German kid that's going to blah. And it's like, the truth is we're human beings, man. That's so, yeah, you were raised in Germany. I was raised in Montana. That's one little part of us. But those labels, so often people want to throw this on you and expect you to act a certain way, sound a certain way, be a certain way. With the truth is, look, man, that's a part of who I am. I learned some of that, but that doesn't define me. And I see this often with people that have traveled abroad and have had the chance to go see other cultures, say, there's a big world out there, man. And we need to feel free to explore that. Don't put me in a box. Don't label me. That's for you. That's not for me. And I wish more people could find that, because the truth is we are infinite and we can change our story at the drop of a hat. You can change your story today. What would you hope for people to hear in that, to really be able to receive that? Because I think when people find that authentic self, there's nothing more beautiful in this world than to watch them truly shine that light.
Yeah. No, I'm so with you. And that's kind of what I discovered on that journey the last 20 years, is that seeing others unpack that inner genius, unpack who they really are. There's a satisfaction, there's a joy in that journey of being someone's guide, being someone's coach, being someone's mentor, or whatever it may be, right? What I want people to hear in that, I think it's very simple. Who are you? Who are you really? What's that unique quality of you that's present in every moment that you're in, that no one else can bring to that moment? If we were to take a deep breath together and we were to just feel into the moment, what's that unique part that's not your profession, your last, athletic performance, your last intellectual performance, whatever accolades you've accumulated, but just that feeling that is you. That feeling that's you when your mother is in the room, or that feeling that's you when there's like 100 strangers in the room. Because uniquely ourselves, in a certain way, only we ourselves experience that. And so, this is not meant as like a metaphorical picture, but like quite truly, I believe that is a big part of the reason for living, is to understand who we are on a soul level, on a more spiritual level, to truly understand who we are in the body, and to bring that equation to every place we go, to bring that essence to every place we go. And if we just follow the boxes of being a good boy, a good girl, I mean, that's, sometimes that's important too, but mostly that's just gonna repeat what others have done before us. And so I think there's a healthy level of paradox in those kind of things that I just said as well, that there are tons of moments when it is our role to just absorb, to learn, to grow, to read the book, to listen to the podcast, to go out and make an experience, be a beginner. But in all of those moments, we can bring that unique part of us to the moment, right? And so that's what ultimately shapes us. That's what makes us better. That's what makes us more capable. And I think everyone's actually deep down craving a healthy level of self-worth that reminds them, wow, it's a new day. What a fucking blessing. Let's go out there. Let's create something. Let's not just be a participant of observing and digesting, but let's be a creator on this day.
What was one of the biggest challenges you had to fully embrace it? Because I think for a moment, the box again, let's say mom or dad, and it's like, okay, I'm exploring something different. So I know you've done ayahuasca. I've done it as well. That idea frightened to a degree my parents, to be like, what are you talking about? That doesn't make sense to me. So I'm just curious for you, how has it been received as you brought some of these different, let's call it Eastern practices of meditation. Let's call it the various modalities that you do that allow you to really get quiet, to find that. How was that received in your own family, some of your friends? And how did you really, I don't know if it was challenging, as it was for me at times, try to explain and open their eyes to, there's some really cool stuff out there, guys.
That's such a beautiful question. And you happen to know, right? Like I'm sitting in my childhood home, visiting right now, beautiful country of Germany, and there's this Ram Dass quote that if you think you're enlightened, go spend a weekend with your family and see how it goes. And you know, there's a few different answers I could go into. I think one of them is at some point I stopped trying to bring things to others that didn't ask for it. That was a pivotal learning, because it does feel like misery. It's just like it's agony to try to share something that you're excited about. Hey, let's try out this meditation, or have you heard of, plant medicines, or have you heard of what good this could do for you? And then people are just looking at you like what? Get out of here. That does feel quite horrible, actually. It's like, what, you don't accept me, or why wouldn't you be open-minded to this? And so, because that's been the story of my life the last 20 years, I've learned to, read the room, and I've also learned to ask those questions first if someone actually wants to hear it, and to also respect, when I said, be yourself, feel who is you in each and every moment, and cultivate more of that, right? Bring that to every equation. That also means, well, if others are different, I got to accept that. And then there are moments when to pick up the mic and speak about it, and explain what ayahuasca is, or explain what a positive experience you could make if you go to, an immersion like that. And then there's moments when to understand that people aren't ready for this, or it's maybe not their cup of tea, quite literally. And so, I think that's also the beauty of the human experience. There's a reason why we're like 7.8 billion humans, because there are so many different pathways. And that's my personal opinion. I don't think there is a pathway that's superior to other pathways. I think they all, they all are meant to bring us back to the heart. And in the heart, I can forgive you if you don't love what I'm doing. But the important point is, am I changing who I am because you don't like who I am? Or can I stay true to who I am and love you just the same, and love me just the same? And so that's always been, I think that's always been the biggest teacher for me, is to stand in the fire of other people's opinions and be like, okay, well, I will actually listen. I will actually take something out of this as a constructive feedback, but also, to be really honest, like, this is actually just me. So let me keep going to my kirtans and sing mantras and meditate, because even though it might be very foreign to you, or you might never understand what it's about, for me it fills my heart. Or let me go to the jungle and sit with shamans from indigenous cultures, because something in my soul tells me this is right for me. And just a little spoiler here, I don't believe anything is for everyone. Like just like ayahuasca, like that is absolutely not for everyone. Not everyone should go and do that. But those of us who feel that call, inquire, explore, ask your questions, ask the tough questions, so you end up with people that you can trust, right? And that's probably true for almost any religious practice or ritual. Is like, ask the tough questions. Don't just follow people because that's what your mom told you to do, right? And so that's always been challenging. I mean, you asked what's been challenging. Like those moments have been challenging. When things go wrong and someone's like, "F that," like, what are you talking about? And realizing, oh wow, I'm not welcome here, and I'm literally just offering a meditation. Like that's weird.
Yeah, I like what you're saying is, look, I'm not going to judge you for not being open to it. I just ask that you maybe not judge me for wanting to do that. I mean, that's the hope overall, right? Is that we leave judgment to where it should be, which is really not involved. This is what's best for me. If you want to learn more about, I'd love to teach you. But if not, it's cool too, man. Like, no big deal. I want to ask you, with the Green Planet, Blue Planet podcast, regeneration is capitalized, man. That is like a big word. Clearly, that word is something that is important to you. What does regeneration mean to you, brother? I'm really curious to see, because I have in my head what I think it is and in my own philosophy. But when I saw that capitalized, I was like, I got to ask, why is that? What's the importance there?
Yeah. Happy to kind of, define it in my own words here. I think regeneration is first and foremost a principle of life, right? So it's not a buzzword like, let's say, sustainability that humans have created to understand what we're doing in relationship with nature or the natural world, but it is actually a inherent principle of life. Like if you happen to cut your finger and have a little wound there, your body will regenerate. The cells will regenerate and heal that little wound, right? Or if you, cut back a tree and trim it, the tree will regenerate. Actually, will grow back faster. That's a principle of life, right? So regeneration is part of the natural cycle, I would say. And so I believe in our human journey, well, there's a lot of destruction and a lot of darkness still happening, but really we're also at this incredible fork in the road of where humans are remembering that we're not here to fight with nature, but that we're fundamentally our nature, right? And what we just talked about earlier, like knowing yourself and trusting your own essence and bringing that to every equation, including business, or especially business, actually. All of those are symptoms of us, as a species, realizing step by step, wow, holy, we're interconnected, right? We're interconnected on the technological grid through the internet, but we're interconnected with all of life. And that understanding is an understanding of the generation, the regeneration of the planet, of consciousness itself, of life itself. And I think it's becoming like a growing movement through many people's lenses and filters into life. Is that what would a world look like, that had this principle that life is sacred and that life is highly intelligent, right? What would a world look like where we honor that principle and our commerce, our trading, our economy, our politics are evolving around that principle rather than they evolve around the principle of like, we humans are at a power struggle with nature and we need to dominate every inch of the world. And so this is going to take time. This is not a thing we say 2 times and then everyone adopts it. There's interests in all directions, and there's frustrating things to observe. There's definitely still a lot of darkness in the world too. However, when I started the podcast, I wanted to go out there and meet just incredible humans on incredible missions. I've had, as you said, 350 and more interviews at this point. It's really just to listen and interview and ask questions to those leaders of regeneration, game changers in business, game changers in thought leadership, and understand that this movement is truly happening, even though it might not be televised.
Yeah. There's a topic in here that I'm excited to see where this goes. And it's thinking in terms of decades, not in terms of days. And the reason that's interesting to me, I often say the days are long, but the years are short. And that's in reference to my kids. Like I say, when they're growing up, the days are long. But next thing, my son is a 17-year-old senior. He's going to college next year. That's insane. So I'm curious what the thought is, thinking in terms of decades and not in terms of days. What does that mean, brother? Where are we going with that?
Yeah, I love it, because what we're seeing there is a paradox where, what you're saying is equally true than the statement you just quoted me as, which is decades, thinking in decades, not days. Is it's paradoxically both true, right? So yes, life happens one step at a time in the moment, and those moments can be, it can be lengthy. A day can be full of life, full of experiences. However, when we think in decade, not days, we actually zoom out. We give ourselves time to understand who are we in the context of the next 10, 20, 30, 40 years. What leverage can we create? What kind of impact can I have over a lifetime rather than just over a few days or a few weeks? And probably everyone listening has an experience like that, where life is just so full that you're kind of just, you're just swallowed up by it. Things are happening, you're just reacting, you're maybe struggling, you're maybe going through some hardships. You just got to take those phone calls and make one step after the other and hope at the end of the day that it all worked out, right? However, there are also times in life when we have a little bit more space. And sometimes in those moments, we have the time to reflect. And so what I'm saying with thinking decades, not days, is especially for entrepreneurs that are playing on the highest level, inspired leaders know that flow happens at that intersection of discipline and surrender, right? It's not just about, pounding it hard and going, hustling. It's both. It's surrender and discipline, right? And so in those moments when we surrender, we can get in touch with what is called, kairos, not chronos. Chronos and kairos are 2 concepts that the Greek had for time. Chronos being chronology, like the clock, right? day after day, hour after hour, minute after minute, week after week, and Kairos being the more fluid time, the timeless time, the kind of time you get into when you do sit in the jungle with a cup of ayahuasca. And from that perspective, and you can get there just through meditation or breath work, or literally you can get there just by sitting in silence under a tree. But from that perspective, sometimes we can interface in our inner world with this longer arc that we're on. There's decades. And also, like, let's be real, if you look at Eastern culture, like Japanese culture, or many high-level entrepreneurs, they speak about the same principle: decades, not days, because over decades you can make tremendous progress. And usually we overestimate what we can achieve in 1 year, and we underestimate what we can achieve in 10 years.
Yeah, man, you put two words together that really are fascinating to me, and that's the discipline and surrender, because surrender is probably one of the more important words that I have really learned this past decade, really, where I've learned to surrender to some of life's atrocities. Like there's shitty things out in the world, and I could be full of vile and spit and just anger, but the truth is it exists, and that anger doesn't do anything to serve that. And it's interesting when you said discipline and surrender, I was like, is it the discipline to surrender? And it was just fascinating, brother. As you were saying that, I was like, holy shit, I've never put those two together and be like, if I could always have the discipline to surrender to some of life's really challenging moments, the fact that, molestation is still in this world, or let's say, scarcity of food in regions of the world. I hate it. I don't like it, but I almost have to surrender to the fact, otherwise I'm going to turn into this cynical asshole. And as you said that, I was like, holy cow, is it the discipline to surrender? And I've never put the two together. So I was just curious what you thought, and if you had intentionally put those together that in that manner, or if that's just the way I had heard it.
Short answer would be yes, 100%. I love it. This is great. Yeah, I mean, they're two different poles, but then there's also that middle path that you just mentioned, right? The discipline to surrender, which is quite beautiful, and actually, again, quite paradoxical in a certain way, that it takes discipline to surrender. But if we take them as two different poles at first here, usually people that have very high levels of discipline in their life need a lot more surrender, right? That could be, if your life is completely structured from 5 a.m. to 10 p.m. and every half an hour what you're going to do, and you're so disciplined, you run that marathon in under 3 hours, or whatever it might be, usually you just need to surrender more and just not just go with the flow, but let the flow take you. And not all the time, but more regularly, right? The more feminine kind of pole, if we talk about polarities. And then in the other side, though, if you always go with the flow, right, and everything's just like one big flow of life, man, yeah, you most likely need more discipline, because there's an interplay of the two of them. And so, you mentioned earlier, I get to travel a lot, and I love this kind of way of living, and supporting people in different places and following the call wherever it takes me at times. And when you travel, there's a healthy amount of surrender that just happens, because there are so many factors that you cannot control. However, on travel days, I'm extremely disciplined, right? I got my bag all packed up. I'm on time. Maybe I'm even early. I didn't just brush my teeth and take a shower. I worked out. I feel great. I'm in shape. I got a haircut, whatever it might be, right? Because I want to make sure I am fully ready for that next step. That's a certain amount of discipline. Once I'm on the journey, though, if my taxi is 10 minutes late, I couldn't care less. I mean, I kind of anticipate things like that, right? Because it's part of a big day if you move somewhere. And so I'm making this more, benign example, because it's something that happens in my life a lot, where I hear other people all the time, clients, friends, whomever, they're like, how do you travel so much? Man, those days are exhausting. And it's like, yeah, but not really. If you're ready to both be disciplined to show up for what you can control, and you're ready to surrender for what you cannot control, That's kind of how life is at large. There are certain things we can control. Let's be disciplined about them. Let's show up. Let's be in shape. Let's stand strong when there is actual violence or atrocities happening. But let's also surrender to understand that there's a bigger, much bigger picture of life that that needs more from us than just having political opinions, but that needs for us to see the larger picture at play, and sometimes to just surrender, like you said, to be okay with something, even though it makes us deeply ferocious on the inside. And I would actually add to that, JM, not to let that anger go to waste. It goes to waste if the anger turns into hate, right? And that anger is applied against someone. But it doesn't go to waste if that anger, that fire in you as a father, as a protector, as a creator, if that informs your next step, if that informs your next conscious step, if that informs what you create for the world, right? And so I think that's where there's a very important distinction to make is, are we ruled by our emotions, or are we surrendered to feel those emotions and then we just let them inform what we do next?
Yeah, I think that's a beautiful point, to utilize that hate for fuel to do something positive in the world, do something that actually can help to not eradicate, again, let's say whatever the example was, scarcity of food, but rather what can you do with some of that fuel. You said something fascinating, and we say it almost, it's just part of, as we're going along, people will be like, oh, those travel days are so exhausting. When have we lost our minds and perspective to say, I'm traveling from, okay, you're going to be going from Germany to Mexico City on a very nice airplane. That's so exhausting, Julian, that you have to travel from one amazing country to another and go explore. But honestly, brother, this is part of what people say all the time. We've lost that perspective where it's like, that's not truly exhausting, actually, at all. But yet it is part of so many people's just verbiage on a daily basis. How do we keep perspective, brother? Because you said it, and it's so true. I've said it to people. I've said it to myself. And it's so freaking ridiculous that we even say that out loud, if you think about it for a moment.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I love this topic. I think it's extremely important to pay close attention to how we word things, how we say things, especially to ourselves, actually. And then, being a bit of a cross-cultural chameleon, having, lived in different countries and speaking different languages and getting to speak them on a daily as well. There are lots of times when I'm like, isn't that interesting? What a colloquialism of this culture, this American culture, or this, European culture, or this South American culture, whatever, where people just say things because that's what you say. How's it going? Oh my God, that was so exhausting. Whatever it might be, right? But sometimes those are just colloquialisms that we don't have to actually repeat. We just kind of feel like this is what the other one wants to hear from us. So the best thing is to stop oneself and to, as you said, gain perspective again, right? I do this with writing. I definitely like to get up in the morning to watch a sunrise, but really in the mornings, I'm not necessarily the most chatty person, 9 out of 10 mornings. And so I'm making this example because in the mornings, it takes me a bit to get that perspective, and I'm happy to admit that, because it's not that I'm not excited for the day. It just takes me a little bit of time to get into this perspective where I'm like, oh my God, I love this day. Let's go. And so because I know myself and I understand that this is the process I go through, because I've watched myself go through it, I have certain rituals and little tricks that get me there, right? Just like someone would, I don't know, need to have a cup of coffee or whatever it might be. I start to journal. I start to meditate. I do breath work, right? I give myself, if I can, at least 2 hours before I take the first call, because I just know I'm going to be in a much better energy if I have 2 hours after waking up. If I can, it depends on the time zone, depends on the day. I don't set an alarm. I sleep until I wake up. Then I start with journaling. I start like really nice and slow. And the reason why I'm explaining this is because it allows me to gain that perspective. It allows me to realize I am so grateful for today. This is incredible, right? And once you reach that place, that's go time. That's let's go win time. That's when you want to have all the phone calls. That's when you want to, make that next leap. But before I'm in that mindset, I'm not a very social person beforehand. And just to touch on, the traveling example too, I know I've stretched this a few times already, but it's funnily paradoxical because traveling does make you tired, right? So it does cost us certain grains in our body to like actually take the airplane. If I'm in an airplane for 10 hours, oh yeah, my body is exhausted after, but my mind is still grateful. Why? Because I can practice this perspective of gratitude, and I can honor my body. And when I have the next opportunity to sleep, I go to bed and enjoy that sleep, right? But it's about understanding what part of the experience do I want to give conscious focus to? Do I want to complain and whine about a truth or a fact just because I'm right or just because I get sympathy from others? Or do I have the mental power, the willpower, the focus power to pivot back to all the reasons I'm grateful for? Like, oh my God, such great service today. Or wow, I just, listened to 3 podcasts in a row and took notes on something I wanted to catch up on in forever. Or man, these last 3 weeks with my family, what a blessing that I get to spend that. Right. Like my head can stay with those examples while I'm traveling, much rather than, oh, the leg room in here is very short. Man, I can't wait to get out of here. Right.
Yeah, the self-reflection that you just gave, I hope parents are listening because, and I've done this to my kids. Hey, get up, it's 6:30, whatever, put a smile on your face and let's go. But that's truly, everybody's process is so different. And it is interesting, brother, because I literally did it to my son this morning. It's like, hey, bud, and I'm cheery because I am a morning person.
Mm-hmm.
He's not. And allowing him to find his own process and set some of these boundaries, which that's really what I want to get into next, is some of the boundaries, because I have one with my wife where it's like, look, for the first 2 hours in the morning, there's no negativity in my world. It just doesn't exist. I don't care if the sky is falling. Like, I don't want to hear it. About 9 o'clock, maybe it's 8 o'clock, I guess now. About 8 o'clock, sure. Give me some adversity. I can deal with it. But there's that 5 a.m. to about 8 a.m. window where I'm like, I am in this blissful Zen place where I'm working on me and I don't want negativity. And one of the topics we have is setting boundaries and creating from a full and overflowing cup. That's a big part for me. This is a boundary that I had to learn to set so I could show up as the best version of me. I can't have negativity, or I choose not to have negativity for the first 3 hours or so. Talk to me about boundaries, brother, because I think it gets a real negative connotation, the word boundaries, and yet they're so vitally important so we can live the most fulfilling lives possible.
Yeah, I love that topic. And just to, highlight something you just said there, JM, something really important. I need this time to work on me. That is huge, right? So I grew up in a fairly athletic family where, people went for all kinds of workouts and runs and whatever. That is very commonly known for most people, is work on yourself on a physical level. Go to the gym, have that diet, go do that run, go play that game. The physical taking time for you to get better, very well known principle and concept in many people's lives. Not everyone's, but many people's lives. But the mindset, the willpower part of it, the part of it that's just understanding who I am in a quiet room, understanding who I am when I'm alone in nature without my cell phone, right? Most people don't do enough of that, where they just get to know who is there when nothing else is happening. Who is there? Who are they? Who am I? Right? Again, that's the question we started with. Who am I? And so to jump back to the question you asked about boundaries, I think it always comes back to the who am I, right? Because if you don't know who you are and you don't know how you tick, how are you going to set healthy boundaries for yourself? And let's call them guidelines or principles that you want to honor yourself and then to honor others. How are you going to be able to communicate them in a somewhere between polite and kind? Those are not always my favorite words because they mean different things to different people from different cultures, but somewhere between, or let's call it loving. How can you communicate something in a loving way if you don't even know what you're communicating? And so for most people, when it's about boundaries, that's the problem. We don't generally know exactly what we need, what the boundaries are. Do we need to say no more often? Well, that's true for some people. Do we need to say yes more often? That's also true for other people, right? And so it's a very individual topic, which I do think comes back to knowing oneself from a spiritual perspective, knowing oneself from a very physical perspective, and understanding what are my needs, what are my wants, what do I want from this life, what do I want from these next 6 months, what do I want from these next 6 days. And when I know what I want, well, it's usually pretty easy to then communicate to the people around me. But it's, including for you and I, it would be quite hard to communicate what you want if you don't even know what you want. Right. And so I think boundaries and guidelines or principles of our life come back to this understanding of who am I, what do I want, what do I need. And for me personally, what works the best is journaling, because then I see myself, especially if you journal with handwriting in an actual book. It's a pretty slow speed compared to most of our interactions on cell phones or laptops nowadays, right? It's not voice to text. It's not just like like assisted texting with your thumbs. It's handwriting. So you're like, oh my God, here I go, developing a thought. But you're basically in that speed of your inner mind. And so that's a very beautiful way to get to know oneself. And then from there, communicate that to the people around us. And I would say those people that truly love us, they actually enjoy when we communicate our boundaries, as long as we do so lovingly, right? Because back to your son in the morning, or me in the morning, or maybe even you in the morning with your 2 hours of positivity, you're going to be such a better dad or husband if your boundaries get honored first, right? If you get those 2 hours in the morning, well, after that, you probably can solve any problem. Why? Because you were honored in who you are, and you asked for something that you then got in return, right? And so I think the communication skills there are highly important, but it really comes back down to knowing who we are, knowing what we want, and accepting that that's fluid. It can change. It doesn't need to be the same all the time.
Yeah, and you can see why this works not only personally but in business. I mean, he literally just described like, who am I? What do I want? And it sets everything, proper expectations, what we should be working on. The way you said, I was like, well, I get why he's such a good business coach as well, because it's clear you're asking the proper right questions. Brother, I could go so many ways, and I can't believe we're already running up on time. I'll just open forum moment where anything you want to talk about. I didn't know enough to ask you, Julian. You're like, JM, we got to say this before we get off. It's floor is open. Go for it.
Yeah, thank you for that prompt. I love that. I think what it comes down to is to lead life as yourself, to live it as yourself, but to lead life, right? So if we are in touch with our internal world, when we are in touch with that internal world and we know what we want from life, then we can lead life like that. We can actually lead a life that navigates us towards our desires, towards our goals, our dreams. And as an entrepreneur, specifically, that's how you lead people in an inspired way, is when you lead as yourself. You don't lead in a way that you're supposed to be, right? Many people that I work with, once they're in that CEO role or once they're in a certain income bracket, there are all of these external strains on this is how you're supposed to be. This is what this team needs and that person needs. It comes back to the same common denominator, though. When we know ourselves, we can lead as ourselves. We can be authentic without a problem. And so that's how we empower people, and that's how we elevate ourselves as leaders, and that's how we ultimately create a life on purpose. And so that's my mission. That's what I love doing. That's what I love helping people with at events, in companies, on stage, you name it. And so it's just shining a spotlight on that little sentence, leading as yourself, right? And for many people, that's just kind of the beginning of the journey. Wait, what does that even mean? Leading as myself. Who am I as a leader, right? And so that's what we do with the Ultra Method. You're probably going to link it out, theultramethod.com. We're also on LinkedIn all the time with our teams. I also have another website called greenplanet-blueplanet.com for the podcast. That's more focused on regeneration than on leadership principles for entrepreneurs. But those two as pillars have been my pillars around purpose for me in the last 6 years. And I love this kind of work. So anyone who felt inspired in this episode, just get in touch with us, reach out, LinkedIn, social media, or Julian at ultramethod.co. And yeah, let's start a conversation.
Yeah, they'll absolutely be linked in the show notes. And it's so true, you guys. Leading as your authentic self, it's the only way to lead. It really is. It's fulfilling, it's rewarding. People will follow you. Truly, you will have true influence if you do that. Everything else is bullshit. And it really is, Julian. I love the message. I appreciate you, brother, being here and sharing your knowledge. And yeah, man, just freaking awesome, dude. So glad you're in my zone now. You're part of my group now, and safe travels to you out there. But thank you for coming, man. You're awesome.
Thank you, JM. I can't wait to have you on the Green Planet Blue Planet show and continue our conversation, dive deeper, and hear more about your journey. And until soon.
Yeah, brother. I look forward to it as well. I mean, guys, literally, there's so many things I wrote down, and he just kept hitting us with just solid nugget after nugget. I was like, that's so good. So please share this with someone that you know, whether it's for their personal life, their business life. Both sides will absolutely exponentially get better just listening to Julian. So share this out. And until next time, remember, your mindset matters. I appreciate all of you so much. We'll talk to you soon.